Have you ever heard a law so strange that you wondered there's no way that was actually real? History is full of bizarre rules that sound like jokes today, but many of them were once taken very seriously. Some were created to maintain order, others were designed to display power, control society, or solve problems that no longer exist. While some of these laws may seem ridiculous through modern eyes, they often made perfect sense to the people who lived under them. Today, we're traveling across thousands of years of history to uncover 12 of the weirdest laws ever enforced and the surprising stories behind them. Number 12, if your house collapsed, you could pay with your life. Around 3,800 years ago, King Hammurabi of Babylon created one of the world's first written legal codes. Among its nearly 300 laws was one aimed at builders. If a builder constructed a house and it collapsed because of poor workmanship, killing the owner, the punishment wasn't a fine. The builder could be sentenced to death. If the collapse killed the owner's son, the builder's own son could face execution instead, a reflection of Babylon's harsh system of justice. To us, this seems unbelievably cruel. But in ancient Mesopotamia, buildings were made from mud brick that could fail if poorly constructed. Strong laws were meant to force builders to take responsibility for their work. Although modern legal systems no longer punish people this way, the basic idea that professionals should be held accountable for negligence still exists today. It's one of history's earliest examples of construction laws, just with consequences far more severe than anyone would accept now. Number 11, the beard tax. Today, growing a beard is simply a matter of personal style. But in the late 1600s, beards became something people had to pay for. After traveling across Europe, Tsar Peter the Great of Russia became fascinated by Western fashion and believed his country should modernize. One obstacle, in his eyes, was the traditional long beard worn by many Russian men. Rather than banning beards completely, Peter introduced a beard tax. Men who wanted to keep their facial hair had to pay a yearly fee. After paying, they received a small metal token proving they had purchased the right to wear a beard. Anyone unable to show the token risked having their beard forcibly shaved. The goal wasn't really facial hair, it was changing an entire culture. Peter believed adopting Western customs would transform Russia into a stronger and more modern nation. Today, those tiny beard tax tokens have become rare historical artifacts, reminding us that even something as ordinary as growing a beard was once controlled by law. Number 10, you could be punished for wearing the wrong clothes. Imagine opening your closet each morning only to discover that the law decided what you were allowed to wear. Throughout medieval Europe, governments introduced what were known as sumptuary laws. These laws controlled clothing, jewelry, fabrics, and even colors based on a person's social class. Silk, velvet, expensive furs, pearls, and richly decorated garments were often reserved for nobles. Merchants, craftsmen, and ordinary citizens could face fines or even have their clothing confiscated if they dressed above their social status. Leaders believed these rules protected the social order by making it immediately obvious who belonged to the upper classes. In reality, they also prevented wealthy commoners from appearing equal to the nobility. As trade expanded and more people became prosperous, enforcing these laws became increasingly difficult. Eventually, most of them disappeared. Today, fashion is seen as a form of personal expression, but for centuries, simply wearing the wrong fabric could make you a criminal, and we've only just begun. Because next, we'll discover why medieval courts once put animals on trial, why one government tacked the windows in your house, and how a simple game could become a legal requirement. History, it turns out, was far stranger than fiction. Number 9, animals were put on trial. Imagine walking into a courtroom, the judge takes his seat. Lawyers prepare their arguments, witnesses are called, but the accused is a pig. As unbelievable as it sounds, animal trials were surprisingly common in medieval Europe between the 13th and 17th centuries. Pigs, horses, rats, dogs, and even insects were sometimes brought before courts after being blamed for damaging crops, attacking people, or causing death. Domestic animals could be represented in court, sentenced, and even publicly executed if found guilty. Wild animals and pests faced a different kind of trial. Church officials sometimes held religious proceedings, symbolically ordering rats, locusts, or insects to leave farmland or face excommunication. To modern society, the idea seems absurd, but at the time, these trials reflected a world where religion, law, and daily life were deeply connected. People believed that maintaining justice meant holding every living creature accountable, even animals. Today, these bizarre court records remain among the strangest legal documents ever discovered. Number 8A, tax on windows. In 1696, England introduced one of history's strangest taxes, not on land, not on food, not even on income. Instead, the government taxed windows. The more windows your house had, the more tax you paid. The idea seemed simple. Wealthier people usually owned larger homes with more windows, so the tax was intended to target the rich. But it produced an unexpected result. To avoid paying, homeowners began bricking up their windows. Entire streets filled with houses that had rows of sealed window openings, leaving families living in darker, poorly ventilated homes. Some of these blocked windows can still be seen on centuries-old buildings across Britain today. Eventually, the health problems caused by the tax became impossible to ignore. In 1851, the window tax was finally abolished. It remains a perfect example of how a law designed to raise money ended up changing the architecture of an entire nation. Number 7, practicing archery was mandatory. Today, if you want to play a sport, that's your choice. But in medieval England, practicing archery wasn't a hobby. It was the law. Long before firearms became common, the English longbow was one of the most powerful weapons on the battlefield. Victories such as the famous Battle of Agincourt proved just how devastating skilled archers could be. To ensure the kingdom was always prepared for war, English kings passed laws requiring many men to regularly practice archery. Sunday afternoons after church services were often reserved for target practice. Some other games and recreational activities were even discouraged because they distracted people from improving their archery skills. The government believed national security depended on citizens becoming expert bowmen. While the law may sound unusual today, it helped create one of the most effective military forces of the Middle Ages. Sometimes, playing sports wasn't just encouraged, it was a legal duty, and the countdown only gets stranger, because next, we'll visit a civilization where speaking too much could get you thrown out of society, a country where one everyday ingredient became so valuable it sparked outrage, and a law so unusual that it quietly changed millions of homes forever. Number 6, you could be banished without committing a crime. Imagine waking up one morning to discover that your neighbors had voted to exile you from your city, not because you stole, not because you committed murder, but simply because they believed you had become too powerful. This was the ancient Athenian practice known as ostracism. Once each year, citizens could vote on whether someone posed a threat to democracy. If enough people agreed, they scratched the person's name onto broken pieces of pottery called ostraka. The individual wasn't executed or imprisoned. Instead, they were forced to leave Athens for 10 years. Interestingly, they kept ownership of their property and could eventually return. The goal wasn't punishment. It was preventing anyone from becoming so influential that they might seize absolute power. While the practice seems strange today, it was one of history's earliest attempts to protect democracy before a dictatorship could even begin. Number 5, salt was so valuable it was controlled by law. Today, salt is one of the cheapest ingredients in the world, but centuries ago, it was so valuable that governments tightly controlled it. In medieval and early modern France, a law known as the gabelle required many citizens to buy a fixed amount of salt directly from the government at heavily taxed prices. People couldn't simply purchase cheaper salt elsewhere. Smuggling salt became one of the most common crimes in the country. Thousands of people were arrested, imprisoned, or even executed for illegally trading what is now an everyday kitchen ingredient. The tax became deeply unpopular, especially among poorer families who depended on salt to preserve food before refrigeration existed. Many historians believe the gabelle became one of the many symbols of inequality that fueled public anger before the French Revolution. Sometimes, even something as ordinary as salt could become a weapon of government control. Number 4, it was illegal not to attend church. In many parts of medieval and Tudor England, going to church wasn't simply a personal choice, it was the law. Following the English Reformation, laws required many citizens to attend official church services every Sunday and on important religious holidays. Failing to appear could result in fines or other penalties. The government believed religious unity was essential for maintaining political stability. In an age when religion and government were closely connected, refusing to attend church was sometimes viewed as a challenge to the authority of the state itself. For many families, attendance wasn't just about faith, it was a legal obligation. Over time, as ideas about religious freedom evolved, these laws gradually disappeared. Today, the idea of being legally required to attend a place of worship seems extraordinary. Yet for centuries, millions of people lived under exactly that system. And now, we've reached the final 3. Next, we'll discover a law that turned drinking coffee into a political issue, another that punished luxury itself, and finally, the strangest law on our list, one so unusual that it still fascinates historians today. Number 3, coffee was once banned. Today, coffee is one of the world's most popular drink, but in the 16th and 17th centuries, some rulers viewed it with deep suspicion. Coffeehouses were rapidly becoming places where people gathered to exchange news, debate politics, and criticize those in power. In 1675, England's King Charles II even attempted to close coffeehouses, claiming they encouraged unrest and the spread of false rumors. The decision was wildly unpopular. Merchants, writers, and ordinary citizens protested, forcing the king to withdraw the order just days later. Although the ban was short-lived, it revealed an important truth. Sometimes governments weren't afraid of the drink itself, they were afraid of the conversations happening over a cup of coffee. Number 2, luxury could be a crime. Imagine becoming wealthy only to discover that the law prevented you from enjoying your own success. Throughout medieval Europe and parts of Asia, rulers enforced sumptuary laws that restricted luxurious lifestyles. In some regions, ordinary people were forbidden from wearing silk, gold jewelry, expensive furs, or certain colors reserved for royalty and the nobility. These laws weren't simply about fashion. They reinforced the social hierarchy, ensuring that status could be recognized instantly by appearance alone. Although many wealthy merchants could afford these items, buying or wearing them could result in heavy fines. Over time, growing trade and changing societies made these restrictions impossible to enforce. Eventually, most of these laws disappeared, leaving behind a fascinating reminder of how governments once tried to regulate wealth itself. Number 1, medieval Europe put insects on trial. Our number 1 spot belongs to one of history's strangest legal traditions, not because it involved people, but because it involved insects. When swarms of locusts, beetles, or other pests destroyed crops, some medieval communities didn't simply accept the disaster. Instead, church courts sometimes held formal legal proceedings against the insect. Clergy would appoint representatives, read official charges, and symbolically order the pest to leave the region. In some cases, the insects were even excommunicated from the community. Of course, the insects never appeared in court, but to the people of the time, these ceremonies reflected the belief that law, religion, and nature were all connected under God's authority. Today, the idea sounds almost unbelievable, yet surviving historical records confirm that these extraordinary ceremonies really did take place. It stands as one of the strangest examples of how differently people understood justice hundreds of years ago. From builders facing death over collapsing houses, to taxes on beards and windows, to animals standing trial in court, history is filled with laws that seem unbelievable today. Yet each one tells us something important about the society that created it. What seems ridiculous now often made perfect sense in a different time, shaped by the fears, beliefs, and challenges of that era. As civilizations evolved, many of these strange laws disappeared, but they remain fascinating reminders of how dramatically the world has changed. So, which of these weird historical laws surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this countdown, don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating stories where history, science, and human curiosity come together.